You know, someone wrote the other day that Pastor Manning does not kowtow to anybody. And if he did, he'd be a very wealthy man. And I would. And long before, by the way, I became a preacher, I could own a home in Spain. I could have a home in Barcelona. I could have taken a position with Procter & Gamble to head up the division of health and beauty aids in Barcelona after I'd served them for 40 years. They'd put me in Barcelona or they'd put me in Italy someplace. And, I'd be running the Procter & Gamble division there and could have several homes all over every place and have a retirement and a golden parachute that would put me into millions of dollars upon retirement. That's before I got into the preaching business. But even now in the preaching business, the opportunity of having been a trustee with the American Baptist churches, sitting over their global financial pocketbooks, I was the one that made those decisions, and other places where I held these extraordinary positions. But my friends, I will not sell out. I will not carry a particular line just so that I can earn a certain amount of money and prestige and be considered one to be on the local broadcast or the local news pontificating over such matters. But I'm here. And I'm here because God's going to supply my need, the same way he supplied Elijah's need by having the brook cherry trickle down a little water every day and having the ravens bring him some meat. I'm good to go as long as that brook will go. And when the brook dries up, I'm going to find me a widow somewhere, and I'm going to her house and fill her pot and her cruse with oil and meal. And I'm going to eat until the tribulation is over and Jesus returns. But I thought that, it needs to be clear, and we need to pull the cover off of these people, because Trump could not do any of the things that he blatantly, arrogantly does. He would not be able to do any of those things were it not for these 35 to 40 million dyed in the wool. You ain't never seen nobody like these racists that supports him. And he knows it. And he makes no attempt to reach out to anybody but them. Nobody. And he knows that there is enough of them, and their hatred is as stabilized. Their hatred is religious. He's got the whole Southern Baptist religious group, some nearly 60 million constituents, on his voting list. The entire Southern Baptist cadre is on his voting list. And evangelicals wrapped up in that as well. And he knows it. And he knows that he's got the power. That's right. He understands that. He's got the loudest voices of the steeples of the churches of America that is praising his racism, that's praising his hatred. And moreover, he's got these Japheth people, they're having racial orgasms. I mean, they are. They ain't never seen it for more than for the past 200 years. Because, even before the Civil War, there were the abolitionists. There were people who were against slavery. The North and others, there were skirmishes and there were boycotts and there were economic, even before Abraham Lincoln became president, there were many that were against. So they have not seen when you look at Sean Hannity and you look at the Fox News constituency, you're looking at the ghost of 200 years ago of their ancestors who lost their autonomy to brutalize slaves. You're looking at that ghost rise up in 17-year-old boys who have no idea of what it was like, but that spirit is on them. And listen, you can discount me. You can say, Pastor Manning, you're all wrong about that. And that is not the case, that these people are not racist. Let me tell you something. I've slept in their houses. I've eaten at their tables. I've listened to their rhetoric. I have walked and talked with them. Let me tell you, they're racist ass people. That's who the hell they are. They have found, and they may not have been as much, but when they saw Trump come along and loose this spirit, Trump loosed in them the spirit of their ancestors going back 200-300 years ago. And you need to understand, this is a formidable foe in American politics today, that this ghost of racism and white supremacy and savagery of the Japheth man from 200-300 years ago has been loose upon America. And Trump has loosed it. And they're all on one accord. Here, when you ever hear someone say, check this out, because in the event that you're willing to say, Pastor Manning, you're a racist, you're a hater, I thought you were on our team, etc., etc. It ain't true. We just want justice. We just want to take our country back. We just want to stop the abortions. We just want to rebuild our military. We just want to have fairness. We just want to do. Check this out. Check this out. You say all that if you want. You say it. But here's what I want to say to you. When in the history, including the history of Germany, the history of China and Mao Zedong, and the history of Russia with Vladimir Lenin, when have you ever seen a national president of a developed nation say that his cult following is so cultish and so dedicated that if he shot an innocent person in broad daylight on one of the most populous, well-known avenues on planet Earth, Fifth Avenue, that not one person, not one woman, not one teenager, not one farmer, not one Baptist preacher, not one evangelical, not Franklin Graham, not Robert Jeffress, not one of them would doubt him nor leave him if he shot an innocent person on Fifth Avenue. When have you ever heard any damn thing like that from anybody except the devil? You've never heard it. If Hitler said that, if Hitler, perhaps some of his generals will say, no, we're not for that. We're for, trying to clean up Germany, but we ain't for you shooting innocent people. Not so with these racists down there in Oklahoma, in Texas, in Arkansas, Louisiana. Pardon me, Brother Hanukkah. Brother Hanukkah said, you're going to stay with me no matter what. God bless you, Brother Hanukkah. But when have you ever heard? Not Hitler. He couldn't say that. Mao Zedong couldn't say he could shoot an innocent person. And not one of his cult followers would leave him. Not one. Let me tell you something. These Japheth boys down there and over yonder in Ohio and Indiana and in Kansas and in Missouri and in Tennessee and in Kentucky and Alabama, Arkansas, South Carolina, in Georgia and North Carolina and the panhandle of Florida, that these boys are now living the ghost of the resurrection of a period when white supremacy was unchallenged by anybody. That's right. For 150 to 175 to 200 years, white supremacy had no challenge. The white man, the Japheth man, could rape, rob. He could do whatever he wanted to do, anytime he wanted to do it, and there was no law against him. And what you see now is the rise of that spirit in Donald John Trump and his supporters, his Mitch McConnells of the world, and the others, the Gateses of the world. You know the whole list of them, the whole list of them. And I think theologically, spiritually, one has got to take a close look. They've got a close look at the fact that you're not going to undo this by logic. You're not going to be able to undo it. So let's come back to Andrew Johnson for just a moment. President Abraham Lincoln cut a deal. Later, this same deal was cut by John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who was a Catholic. And his daddy was rich. And he ran for president because his dad had the money to put him out there, and he was young, he's charismatic, and the potential of him becoming president on the Democrat Party was viable. But the South was not going to go for a Catholic. They weren't going to do it. And they weren't going to go for a rich, Irish boy out of Massachusetts. So Kennedy, much to his dislike and contempt, chose Lyndon Johnson, a Texas congressman, to be his running mate. Now, Johnson was one of the shrewdest politicians that ever sat down in the Congress. That boy, he was just a wheeler dealer. Lyndon Johnson, that boy could wheel and deal the horns off a billy goat on Christmas morning. Johnson was a politician of politicians. And Kennedy said, I'm going to choose Johnson as my running mate, a man much older than him, his political views much different than those of John Kennedy. And as a result of it, Lyndon Johnson brought to John Kennedy in that election the whole state of Texas and that electoral college around. And then Mayor Daley gave him Illinois and Chicago, and he became president by a margin that's eerily similar to the margin of about 70,000 votes nationally that President Trump, or Tribulation Trump, won the election back in 2016. A similar kind of narrow vote happened with the advent of Johnson and Kennedy. My point, however, is that Abraham Lincoln did a similar kind of thing in choosing not Lyndon Baines Johnson, but Andrew Johnson of North Carolina. And it's all academic since that period. But there's never been anybody that's as much as a racist. And by the way, I need to tell you, Johnson was such a racist that they impeached him. Now the Senate, by a matter of one vote, held Johnson's presidency. He wasn't reelected. But they impeached Andrew Johnson because he was such an avowed racist and hater. They impeached him. There have been 3 impeachments. One, of course, is Johnson, and the other is Trump and Bill Clinton. Nixon didn't get a chance to get that far. But Johnson was the first to be impeached because he was such a racist. So eerily similar now we see, and I think it's important for many of you to realize the difference between Trump and Johnson, or the similarities between Trump and Johnson, and look at the consistency of history of both of these men. Both of these men, they are the personification of the deepest sense of, listen, these white supremacists that support Trump, men and women, they are so deeply supremacist, hate-filled that they are undiagnosable. When you look at Robert Jefferson and all that Southern Baptists, you're talking 30 to 40 million Southern Baptists, another 10 million evangelicals. They are so hate-filled that you can't even diagnose. They are beyond recognition of a diagnosis or any kind of a treatment to treat their racism. They're such racists. And Trump just stokes it every day. I watch Trump talk that talk, which is, dog whistles. We got our country. These people aren't for our country. As if to say that this country only belongs to the racist rednecks out there in red states. Our country, like it don't belong to the people on the East Coast or the West Coast. This is our country, and he's not for our country and our country. And these are just dog whistles. And Trump is proficient. He is proficient at racism. Listen, if you're looking for an Academy Award actor on stoking racism, that even babies in their mama's womb in the red states are born racist. You'd have to, Trump is the Marilyn Monroe. Trump is the Clark Gable. That boy is the Clark Gable of racism. He is. But people are afraid to say it, except me. Except me. Why? Because economically, listen, every preacher's got us, these people, politicians, they're not preachers, they're not servants of the Lord. I'm a servant of the Lord. I don't know, call me a preacher or not. I'm the Lord's servant. I said I'm the Lord's servant, and don't you ever forget that. I'm the Lord's servant. The people survive on the economics and being well spoken of. And you're not going to hear this kind of truth coming from any other venue other than here. But it is not known. People know that these MAGA hat wearers are schizophrenic racists who have seen racism and their leader raise them to a level, and the ghost of the African slave trade. In the great days when the Japheth man in Charleston or in Vicksburg was God. He was God all by himself on them plantations. He was God. And whatever he said was law. Whatever he said to the slave was law. He was God. And that's what these people who support Trump, even if he shoots somebody on Fifth Avenue, feel in their blood now. They feel it. They feel a resurgence of those good old days when the white man was God. Let's make the white man God again. That's what they feel. Look at this boy. He's got orange paint on his face. He's golden boy hair color. He wears a red tie everywhere he goes. I got one on today just to get back at you, Trump. I got a red tie too. No, But I also got a red cross. You might want to pay attention to that too, homie. No, my friends, we are in those days. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.